Alright guys, welcome to today's stream. Um, Sorry for the delay. I think today we have a little bit of problem with the streaming setup, but I'm trying because I think you might face a little bit of buffering, but I'm just checking it, so it should improve over the time. So anyway, welcome everyone, and obviously I am seeing the chat, so just let me know in the chat if you see any major problem or anything like that which needs my immediate attention, and I would be able to help you out. For the Q&A part, we are gonna stick to the end of the live stream, which is going to be, I think, about 25-30 minutes this time, because I want to take a lot of questions this time. So yeah, let's just start. So becoming a pro React developer, this is what I wanted to discuss in this live stream. And we're gonna start off with something about myself, so that you get an idea for people who are new to the channel, who have not been using GoDam or have not seen this channel. So my name is Mehul Mohan. First of all, I'm a full stack developer. I work with both front ends and back ends, especially using JavaScript and its associated runtimes, JavaScript, Node, React Native, stuff like that. I've been working with React for almost 3 years now, I would say. Like, I started off it just as a side hobby, but I really liked it. I picked it up on real quick because, you know, it just clicked me how simple it was and the architecture which React follows. And I'm a big JavaScript fan. Like I said, I have been using a lot of JavaScript technologies and runtimes. So there's that. I also use a lot of Next.js, Material UI, and TypeScript all the time. So this is my go-to tech stack, if you ask me. So the agendas for this current live stream is to discuss some things like what React is, why should you care about that, some topics which I believe you as a person should know about React if you want to become a great developer, you know, things like that. So you should know about those things. Some of my tools I use personally and I have heard about, which I would recommend to everybody who wants to cut off the development time and be a better React developer in general. And finally, I'm just going to leave you with some bleeding edge features of React, which are still experimental, still in works, but just gives you an edge over the world if you are, you know, just getting into loop with those features as you are learning, because they would be there 1 year, 2 year, 3 years down the line, but it's better to be, you know, ahead of the people. So there we have it. So some questions I get a lot about React are, you know, first question is, but what about Angular, Vue, all these frameworks out there? Should I go with Angular? Should I go with Vue? Stuff like that. And I have actually discussed this a lot in my other live streams. It does not really matter which you choose, but once you do that, just go all into that single framework, right? Because the thing is, nobody's really gonna care which framework you're using if you're working in a company which uses that framework, right? What people really care about is how good you are, and your 98% of energy should be spent on becoming good enough when you're learning things. So my option is that if you have doubts about choosing Angular versus React, just go ahead, pick one and go with it, because you're not gonna know the outcome of choosing Angular instead of React anyway, right? So that's the first question. Is React worth it? Absolutely, it's worth it. In 2020, it was started way back. I don't exactly remember, but Facebook introduced it, and the reason it has survived till 2020 and actually thrived as well is because it is a very good technology, a very good piece of technology, which is well maintained, which is robust, which is scalable, and which is production ready. So 100% React is worth it learning in 2020. How should you get started with it? I'm going to cover this in a little bit of slides over this whole talk, but for the most part, you just start with the documentation and the free resources available online. The getting started part should be that's it only. Don't try to just run behind some paid courses or some highly expensive things from the very start, right? Because basic React, basic things about this are actually available for free on the internet, and there are a lot of good resources. I'm going to get to that as well. how to become more comfortable with React. Now, this is a good thing you should ask about when you are just basically working with React for a long time or maybe for some time, and now you're looking to become more comfortable with the technology. By becoming more comfortable is that now you're able to think about solutions which you were not able to think earlier, right? In a breeze. So we're going to discuss that as well. And obviously, once you are becoming comfortable with React at a certain point, you are somebody who knows a lot of things about React, a lot of tech stack, a lot of ways how React works, and maybe in your organization or wherever you work, you're considered sort of a leader who knows answers to all the problems, answers to all the things which your company or startup faces. So we're going to discuss that. So first of all, what is React? Like what it is as a technology. React is a UI library, first thing, not a framework. If you go for Angular, you're going to realize that Angular is a framework. And I just want to touch for 1 second here, what is the difference between a library and a framework. I'm going to just discuss the example for the Angular part. A library ships just for what it is supposed to do, right? React sells itself as a UI library. That means it just manages the view layer of your application, how the components should work. But a framework instead, like Angular, ships with a lot of other things like HTTP API. Angular ships with observable support. A lot of other things which are baked into a framework, baked into a technology is called a framework. So Angular ships with all of that. React ships with a minimal thing, that is, it just works with the UI part of your application. That's it. So oftentimes you're going to see a lot of different tools, a lot of other tools which are available for technologies like React, because it just does not ship with everything inbuilt. The mental model for React is components. That is, you break in components to break in your application into different components, and you can reuse them over the time, right? You can reuse them in your application. So that's the mental model for React. It also follows a virtual DOM strategy. That is, it won't really paint everything on the screen in the first go. It will actually create a near copy representation in the JavaScript world itself, and then it will try to operate on that copy, and then it's going to update the DOM just because of performance reasons. And it is obviously production ready. So why you should care about this? First thing is it's backed by Facebook, which is a big company. Facebook uses React in a lot of internal tools themselves, and a lot of companies, a lot of startups, I don't know, millions of people, I think millions of developers use React as their core product. So it's a very popular technology. It's open source MIT, no problem if you're developing something commercial, something which you want to sell, anything like that, so you can use that. It greatly reduces your code complexity. Now, this is something I want to talk about to people who usually talk about things like, why should you go with React when you can do everything in vanilla.js? The point of React is not that it makes something possible which was impossible. The point is to reduce the development time, right? Because you as a developer don't have the whole, I don't know, infinite time for yourself to create something. You need to have a base, core, solid base for yourself, and then build on top of that technologies you work with. So for the React part, what it does is it provides you a solid base to build on top of. So you don't have to worry about how the components change. You don't have to worry about the imperative part of your code. Basically, you just have to worry about your business logic, things you want to make sure your application works on. And of course, opportunity blast is definitely there. React has so many jobs, so many frameworks like Next.js, Gatsby, things like these use React under the hood. So if you're familiar with React, you're automatically transferring your skills into those sort of technologies as well, which are, which just completely opens different opportunity doors altogether, but have a similar common base, which is React, right? This is just a screenshot from Stack Overflow. I'm not very sure about these numbers, but just a quick little survey shows that React, even if you're in 75th or 80th percentile, you're gonna get a decent amount of payout in India at least, and in the United States as well. So, well, it varies from place to place, I think, but for the most part, you're gonna get a general idea for React. So, core topics before you should dive into React. This is for people who are starting off with React, who have not worked with React before, but are just getting familiar with it. So make sure you have an understanding of these things at least before you get started. I would say basic HTML knowledge is must, right? So you should be able to understand basic, what is tag, attribute, stuff like this. Why is that? Because React uses JSX for the most part, and you're not gonna actually understand how JSX work because if you do not know exactly how HTML is working, right? Because it's very similar in syntax. Then basic JavaScript and ES6 knowledge is also a good thing to have, because if you have that, then if you can just pick up on things quickly in React world, which uses simply JavaScript. Understanding DOM and how it works is also one critical factor. I would say a lot of people miss this, and then they figure it out later on that this is a very, very important aspect of React. If you don't really know what is DOM, how it works, what are the available DOM APIs with you at the moment, I would say go ahead and spend some time. I would say spend a lot of time, first of all, just understanding what DOM is and how it all works in general, right? Because DOM is something which is manipulated by React on the very core, very fundamental basis. React is a library which is just playing with the DOM of your page. And if you don't understand what DOM is, then you won't really understand how React works anyway. So learn about DOM, the available APIs, why it is required, how DOM connects JavaScript and the HTML on your page, sort of that. Not really go into depth of everything, but learn about stuff like these. Work on moderately complex projects without React. This is one of my advice I give to a lot of people. That is, if you start working with a technology like React, it might just put out a message that everything is easy, right? So you might not really appreciate what React does for you. So to actually appreciate what React does for you is actually helpful, is actually good, you gotta try to create, at least recreate some of the projects which uses React earlier, but you converted it into vanilla JS. And you're gonna see that it gets verbose. It gets verbose really quickly. By verbose, I mean you have to write a lot of code now. Business logic gets lost. Most of your logic is the imperative logic, stuff like that. So just make sure you have worked on a bunch of projects which don't really involve React, but were intended to be made for React. So this really helps you. Now, when you're starting React, before React, we discuss all the topics. When you start React, these are some of the topics I think you should focus a lot on. First of all, functional components is a big thing. A lot of people are still stuck within the class-based components and things, partially because a lot of tutorials are still on class-based components, but my personal advice is to shift to functional components as soon as possible. Now, don't really rewrite whole production code bases, that's not what I mean, but for the most part, just start learning about functional components in React, because this is important thing. React is shifting to the functional paradigm, hooks and everything, and class-based components, although not really deprecated right now, but I could really see in next 2, 3 years, 4 years, that the support for functional components would be much better, because inherently that architecture is better than class-based components for multiple reasons, which I won't really get into in this talk, but yeah, that's a good thing to have functional components. So drop class-based components. Again, if you take a look at the React documentation, they very clearly mention that there are no plans to remove classes for React, but the actual fact that they even mention that thing means that the internal React developers are thinking about that people might think that we might remove classes. And if you have seen in the past, you would have realized that a lot of development has been made on the functional components parts. There are a lot of hooks, there are a lot of feature services available just like hooks. It's easy to read, it's easy to maintain. You cut down that that nested structural hierarchy as well when you're using React Dev tools. So it's just the upside when you're using functional components. So yeah, I mean, some people are referring in the chat that learn class components if you have legacy code base to manage. This is absolutely right. If you have legacy code bases, you should be learning class based components. But my suggestion would be, if you're starting off some new projects and if you have no knowledge about functional components, you're doing something wrong. Just take some time out, learn about functional components. You're gonna love it. It would be a change of mindset for sure, because the architecture is different between class and functional, how they work fundamentally as well as on the visual side. But yeah, it's a must-have skill if you're learning React. Then we have some generic topics like props, states. Again, state covers hooks because you have those use state and use effect hooks. So by state and props and stuff like this, I'm meaning functional component side, not really class-based component side. I've not really used class-based components, I don't know, in an year or a year and a half. I think since it was announced, for the most part, I shifted on functional. So yeah, and learn data passing among components, which is using either props or using shared states. So this is also important. A lot of people actually get stuck on that part, that how should two components communicate. So just figure out some generic way of making two components communicate in any hierarchy. That is, if they are child parent, or if they are siblings, or if they are far away inside hierarchy. So obviously, if they are child parent, the easiest way is to use props. If they are siblings, then you can use parent as a common sort of a common middleman to share the state. Then if they are away in the hierarchy, you might want to resort to solutions like context API, Redux. So you should have those those information, those topics in mind, and that would happen only when you are working a lot with things like React. Learn a bit about virtual DOM as well. I won't say it's very much required if you are learning React, but if you are aware about what it is and how it works, it's obviously good. Learn about React keys. A lot of people I have seen ignore those warnings inside the console, which are like, warning you have not specified the key attribute. So learn about that. It has some importance. It has a lot of importance for React. It is also one of the ways to actually forcefully re-render a component, and there are some cases when you want that. So things about that, learn about things like that. Sources to learn from. I'm gonna list some of my sources which I believe should be good enough for a person who's starting or for a person who wants to become comfortable. I'm starting with React Mastery course, which is a code dam. It's not really a course, it's a learning path which would take you from absolute beginner React to somebody who is very much comfortable. And because this is not a single course, this is a learning path, you should be able to pick up anytime, anywhere in between the learning path and get started. This is still a work in progress, so if you are watching this live stream, you can sort of consider yourself as some sort of early access person. So right. And the next point is the Dan Abramov blog. He runs overreacted.io. If you have never heard about this blog, I would highly recommend you to go ahead and check this blog out. It has some of the best articles you're gonna find on React online, period. Right? So go ahead, learn from his blog. He has very high quality content, especially on the functional components part and how the advanced side of functional components really work. So if you're somebody who's up for a ride, maybe you want to enhance your maybe you want to take your React skills to next level, this is the blog you want to check out. Then obviously React documentation is a very well written documentation. You're gonna find a lot of a lot of examples, a lot of best practices in the documentation itself. So for the most part, if you're starting off, React documentation is also a very good place to just get started. This is how the Code Dam React Mastery would look like. We are still working on the learning path, so you would not be really finding a whole lot of content here. But for the most part, this is the path which I think if you follow as a beginner, you should have no problem in becoming very comfortable with React very soon. So this is, you can find the link in the description for CodeDAM website. You can sign up for a free account. That is the only account you can sign up for now. And I would make sure that I inform you guys through email, through whatever, through a live stream or whatever, through a Discord server, which you can also find in the description, when this whole learning path is complete. So we start from HTML, CSS, React intro, then we cover virtual DOM, hooks, sort of stuff like that. We cover the state management, which is also important thing. We cover some more hooks. Actually, these are independent topics. So if you want, by the time this is being prepared, you can also go ahead and just look this as a source of reference and just go ahead and Google these topics. That is also fine. Routing in React is also important, data fetching. Then we have some advanced React concepts. Again, just like I said, it's just still a work in progress, but yeah, just go ahead and sign up on the site and you should have access to it when it is released. All right, so the way you can register it is by going to codedam.com. You can find the link in the description for that. And yeah, that should be it. The way I would analyze anybody's React knowledge, whether it's a beginner or somebody who has worked a lot, is to be honest, it's just 35% the actual React knowledge. That is the actual things which happens in React. When you start working with React, there would come a point when you're going to realize that there's not very much in React to learn, right? You have certain things, you have certain ways you can code, you have certain patterns to follow, but for the most part, React is very lenient. So you have to develop your own style in some way. So that would constitute to 35% of the React knowledge. I would say 40% is the experience. That is the mindset you develop when you're working with React. Because there's a certain way when you're working with React as a framework, there would be certain way you're going to start solving problems, right? You're going to start thinking in terms of components, breaking down code into different components, into different modules, stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, experience is a big thing for me. That is, if you're working with React a lot, you're going to gain that. There's no other alternative. There's 25% core knowledge thing finally as well. That is how much code, how much basics you're clear with HTML and JavaScript in general. So this is also one big thing which I consider a lot of people skip initially, but this is something you should come back as well. If you just initially skipped the basic JavaScript or basic DOM understanding and you started with React, and if you feel later down the line that you have some time, just come back to these aspects as well and cover them, because these are important things to have. Because if you're working on React without knowledge for these concepts, you're gonna just be lost in problems which are complicated or problems which are first timers, right? So there's that. Then talking about some React ecosystem, I would say please start using TypeScript if you are comfortable and if you don't have any sort of hate for TypeScript. So yeah, I mean, you're gonna find so many bugs, you're gonna find so many runtime errors, so many things which could go wrong after building when you're using TypeScript, and you can just find them when you are writing the code, right? You can for the booting part, that is creating your React applications, you can use create React app, which is a very awesome utility which can spin off a lot of React projects with a lot of great practices inbuilt. That is great configurations and everything which is inbuilt. Or you can use your fine-tuned Webpack plus Babel combination as well, which is good, always good, right? I think a lot of people are discussing about the pricing for the thing. The pricing for CodeDAM is not, it's not a strict pricing model. You can go ahead and sign up on the site for free, no strings attached, and you can access the React course as well for free. I'm not really trying to sell anything here. It's a free live session. I'm not really trying to pitch in any course which is paid. So you can go ahead and try CodeDAM. There are some courses which would require you elite membership, but React course is free to access. You can go ahead and try it even now. It's completely free. So coming back to the topic for the ecosystem, we have the UI components part, which is going to be Material UI. At least that is what I recommend. There is a lot of interest in Tailwind CSS as well these days, but to be honest, it's a little bit different from Material UI in the sense that you are building those components from bottom up, right? Whereas Material UI actually ships the whole components, whole things directly to you, which is something I like personally. But if you're somebody who wants to build from the scratch down, that is also fine. State management is very interesting. Redux and Context API are two very popular solutions for global global state management. And the local state management is obviously done by the hooks, right? So you have use effect, use state, use reducer, stuff like that. Well, use reducer is technically used for Context API, but you get the idea. Redux and Context API are two very good solutions right now currently available for you guys to try out, right? And I won't really get into the fight of Redux versus Context API right now. Both are good, both have their own pros and cons, but for the most part, if you're starting off, I would recommend Context API at least, because it's a little bit simple to understand, a little bit easier to get started because it has no external dependency. So yeah, that's my suggestion. Data fetching, you can use any one of these. These are both very awesome libraries which I have found. React Query and use SWR from Vercel. React Query, these are basically used for performing HTTP request, and just like I said, React is not really a framework, so it does not ship with the part where you can actually import something from the library itself and perform HTTP request. You have to go ahead and use the fetch method yourself either, or maybe just use some external libraries like Axios or something. But if you're really doing React data fetching in React, I would recommend check out these two libraries, React Query and use SWR, because they handle a lot of things like caching, and if you're changing the component and if you're coming back to it, then they would not really perform another request. So it saves you a lot of server load. It makes user experience better. So stuff like that. Make sure you have eyes on these two libraries. Then for animations, I would recommend Framer Motion. I would be honest here, I don't have a lot of first-hand experience with Framer Motion. I have just worked on some animations, but I loved it. So if you're somebody who's sort of person who likes a lot of animations and graphics and here and there, Framer Motion is the thing you should go ahead and look into, because I mean, these guys are doing some awesome stuff. So you can just Google up Framer Motion as well, and you're gonna get to the correct website. And for server-side rendering, of course, I'm gonna go with Next.js all days. I actually don't even know if there exists some other great solutions for server-side rendering, which also offer like a way to actually execute node code as well, except Next.js, of course. So yeah, I mean, if you know about any other server-side rendering solution apart from Next.js, let me know in the comments, in the chat. And yeah, I would be happy to just take a look over that. And Vercel and Netlify are two very beautiful solutions for deploying websites when you're working with React. So yeah, I mean, GitHub Pages is also one of the good contenders I would put in here, but yeah, for the most part, Netlify or Vercel would get the job done. So you can just host your websites built on React for free as well. You don't really have to just start paying for everything you do when you're starting to learn. That's the point. Some of the advanced things I think you should know as a React developer. If you are into React for quite some time, this is something you might want to just have an eye on. React reconciler and renderers. That means how React works under the hood. Now, if you have been working with React, you don't really need to know how React works under the hood, but it is very interesting, trust me. And if you have been working for React for so long, you would actually be interested into stuff like this. So again, for this, I would highly recommend you to check out Dan Abramov's blog, that is overreacted.io. He covers a lot of things about how the internals of React work. So if that is something that interests you, go ahead and definitely check that out. How functional components work, ReactDOM tree work, stuff like this. So you have solutions like React Native as well. So for that part, you're gonna see that React Native shares a very huge amount of chunk of React library from the main repo as well. So in fact, React has divided its library into two things, that is React and ReactDOM. That is why you import two things: import React from React and then import ReactDOM from ReactDOM, and not just one, because these two things are separated. React works completely independently from the browser world, and ReactDOM is something which links the browser with React. So learn about stuff like that, how that happens. Again, this lies on the advanced side of knowledge. You don't really need to know a lot of things to work with React, a lot of these things, but just like I said, it's for people who actually want to get an edge over other people. Then there's something known as concurrent mode in React, highly experimental, not even available for the stable branch as well right as of now, but learn about it. I won't really say just go ahead and pick up a paid course or do something with this, not yet, but have a knowledge about what concurrent mode is, what suspense is, how concurrent mode works, and why it is needed in the first place. So there's a documentation for this on React's page. So go ahead and check that out, learn about that, take a look at that, why that is so awesome, so amazing, why that was required in the first place, and yeah, get started with it. React suspense is again part of the concurrent mode itself. So basically, you won't be really needing React suspense on your own, but just like I mentioned, React query and use SWR libraries, which are used for data fetching in React, these libraries internally use React suspense. So it's a lower level abstract concept, to be honest, but yeah, it's interesting. So yeah, I wanted to just keep this talk really short. I think we are just about 30 minutes here, and I want to address questions mostly in this live stream. So go ahead and ask questions in the live chat, and I'll be taking up that for the most part. So Dinesh asks, should it be time to switch from Angular developer to React? As if I compare jobs, I find React has more jobs. Well, it sort of depends on where you live, like the sort of jobs you have. Some Angular is being used by a lot of corporates and big organizations, but React is very popular in small startups and medium sized businesses. So if you are somebody who is not really finding any React job, which is any Angular job, which is honestly difficult to accept because Angular is also very popular. But yeah, I mean, if you want to learn React, you can always do that. What is React Router? React Router is a React library which is used for creating a feel of different pages on a single website, even though React is a single page application. So React Router is used to create that sort of illusion, I should say. Mehul, do you think I should keep on Ionic and just try to get into Ionic plus React, or leave Ionic? Ionic is good. I would say it has been picking speed a lot because of the improved hardwares we have now on mobiles and everything, and how the web and the parts of web are becoming more performant. But obviously it depends on where you want to head in your industry. Do you want to be a person who's developing applications for applications which are like the usual applications like menus and buttons and stuff like that, or maybe you're somebody who's into more innovative side of industry, like games, or maybe some custom UIs which would actually be very difficult to implement in Ionic. So it depends on that. Ionic is a good thing. If you want, you can stick with it, but having a native understanding, at least of some sort, always would help you, even when you're using Ionic. Where to learn Next.js? This is actually a good question. For the most part, what I feel personally, I would tell you, Next.js documentation is not a lot, but there's a reason to that. That is because Next.js is not, technically speaking, something which is something sort of independent. It's just a framework around React. right? So whatever they have on their documentation page is fine, but the 90% of the knowledge which you can use again in Next.js comes from your React world. So I would say just focus on React a lot. Actually, I have a Next.js course coming up on CodeDAM as well. So if you just stay tuned to the channel, you're going to get notification for that. But yeah, for the most part, I would say stick to the documentation and stick to learning of React. Can we use Flask for backend with React? You can, but yeah, I mean, this, if that's the question, obviously you can use backend as Flask and frontend as React. After React for backend, what should I learn? It depends. If your backend involves, if you like JavaScript, then you can obviously go ahead and learn Node.js. If you don't like JavaScript, you have other options like Rust, C#, Ruby, stuff like that, which is also available as a good backend language. And if you have learned React and you want to explore a more advanced side of that, you can always go ahead and learn about server-side rendering as well, which is basically running React on the backend, which might sound funny, but yeah, this thing exists. How to learn part by part after reading documentation? Um, I think you have your answer in the question. You figure out first of all what you have to learn. That is just like I showed the CodeDAM roadmap. You can figure that thing out. You have the paths now. Now go ahead and search about them on the documentation. The only thing which is missing in your question is building things. Now if you want to learn about React, just go ahead, look it up in the documentation and build something around it. Or the other way around, or what you have to do is start building something and then figure out what things you need for building that, and then build things around, then learn things around that using documentation, Google, YouTube, CodeDAM, whatever, right? So stuff like that. That's how you actually learn, by building things. What do you think about React plus Firebase? I have used them both a lot in a lot of projects in the past, and it's an absolutely deadly combination. Deadly as in, I mean, in the good way. So yeah, this is a great combination for React and Firebase. But yeah, if you want to get into backend stuff, I won't really recommend Firebase because it abstracts away a lot of things for you so that you won't be able to learn a lot of things. But if you want to just focus on front end at the moment and you want the backend thing to be sorted out by somebody else, then Firebase and React is a good combination. How can we incorporate machine learning in our React applications? This is a completely, I would say, it's not a linked question with React. So your machine learning, for the most part, won't be interfering a lot with your React logic because React is a UI library. And if you have already trained models or anything which is in TensorFlow.js or any other machine learning framework which you're using, I don't think React would complain a lot if you just place it nicely in your DOM with some custom scripts or whatever. So to answer your question, I think there should not be any inherent problem by using some sort of machine learning library with React, because React is just managing your DOM and ML is just, it would just pick up a single element on your page, probably for showing results or anything, or probably for launching some sort of camera, and that should be it. So React can safely ignore that. What do you think, what router do you think is better, React router or Reach router for managing medium to big projects? Most of my experiences with React router, I have used Reach router for a very short amount of time, but I actually liked Reach router more. So if your question is like what should be used in a managing medium to big project, I would say React router because I know it works, it's good. But I personally liked Reach router when I used it, so I don't really know if that is if that has all the use cases. But yeah, it's something which is good. So if you want, you can go ahead with React router. I think both of them are good, but personally I have used React router for a long time on CodeDAM before it was shifted to Next.js, and it's a solid router for sure. What are your thoughts on Tailwind CSS? It's a good solution out there, I would say. If you are somebody who's interested in, just customizing a lot of things by hand, by yourself, So yeah, definitely go ahead and use that in your projects. It's a very decent solution, I would say. I learned Vue plus Firebase and I have some good in React. Do you think it's good? Well, I always say that, just go ahead and explore everything. But when you think it's time, just go ahead and stick to one framework. So I don't really know about your context, what you do right now, if you're a student or a professional. But for the most part, if you're somebody who can explore right now, like Vue, Angular, React, stuff like that, go ahead and explore that for some time. But when you are certain that you like this one technology more than that one, then obviously go ahead and learn only a single technology, because um, it would be very it won't be very common that you would find somebody who's very good with Vue as well as React, because for the most part these are complementary skills, right? When you need React, you won't really need Vue, and the vice versa. So yeah, to answer your question, it's good. It's good if you're exploring. It's not good if you are trying to become an expert on both. What about 3JS? I don't have a lot of experience with 3JS, so I won't really comment on that. So yeah. How can an intermediate React developer become a master? Well, first thing is that you want to expand your knowledge about React. That is, if you consider yourself to be an intermediate React developer, I am assuming that you can build applications with React for the most part without any trouble. If not, obviously fix on the gaps. Then when you are fluent with the application building process, start learning about the advanced things of React, how React works under the hood, how you can create your own custom hooks, how you can create your own libraries which can attach with React, how React Virtual DOM works, how to work with React dev tools, how to debug React applications, stuff like that. So an expert, a master, I would expect somebody is somebody who can not only just code in React, but also just reverse that as well once it's done. So start working with other code bases as well, people who have written different React applications. Just look at their code, what they do, how they have written their codes. So that would really help you as an individual as well in becoming proficient with React, because you would have a lot of experience seeing a lot of different sort of code. How to change text field color dynamically? I think this would be good on Stack Overflow, because I don't think I can just dictate code on a live stream. If you learn React, also Next. If that is a question, I won't say yes to that, because there's some part in Next you need to cover. But if that's a suggestion to somebody, I would say yes, because for the most part Next.js is React, so you won't have a lot of trouble picking up Next if you are good in React. Should continue to write application with ES6 or TypeScript? These are not complementary things. These are not fighting things. You can write ES6 in TypeScript as well. So if you're writing things in ES6 but plain JavaScript, you can go ahead and start writing things in ES6 and TypeScript together. Mern versus Django versus PHP. What should I prefer for learning backend? Mern is a tech stack, not a language. So I think you mean Node in that. So I would just take Node versus Django versus PHP, or maybe Express, because Django is a framework. So just like I said in my backend development session, which again you can find in the video section, in the backend development session, I told you about the things that for the most part, it does not matter a lot the technology you're working with, as long as you can build a lot of things with it. That means as long as you can solve things with the technology. As a programmer, your job is not really writing code. Honestly, your job is to solve problems, and code happens to be a good way to solve problems. So it does not really matter the thing you pick up, Node, Django, PHP. Just pick up one, learn it, see if you like it, and if you do, just become an expert in it. Just become a master in it. It's as easy as that. Vue.js is easy to start as compared to React.js. Any good reason I stick to React.js? Well, it's a preference of it's a sort of taste for a framework, I would say. I have used Vue.js. I have seen it's easier to pick up, but for some reason I just don't know why I don't work with that a lot. I just like React because I have used all three: Angular, Vue, and React. Personally, I like React. For some reason, it just clicks with me, how it works, how it operates. So just like I said, there's no good reason to drop a framework, because if there were, then that framework would fix that. AngularJS had a good reason to not being used after React was there. So AngularJS got replaced by Angular, right? So just like I said, Vue.js, React.js, Angular, things like these don't really have a very critical flaw in them for flaws as that you drop that framework. So it's just a matter of taste. That's why I say to people that go ahead and start using these things and see which one clicks to you. Can we make a basic video calling website? Can we make a basic video calling website using React.js? And if yes, can you tell us how? I would say it would involve more. It will involve React.js for some part, but you have to figure out the other things as well, the backend stuff, the WebRTC stuff, how you actually make the video calling things. So I could definitely tell you how, but why won't you go ahead on google.com and write how video calling works, how this protocol works, how video calls are actually done, and you're gonna find a lot of information on the internet. Now obviously I can go ahead and create a video and everything like that, but I'm just telling you, I'm just giving you the message here that content is available on internet if you go ahead and search for it. So definitely that is possible. Maybe you won't really find examples with React.js, but for the most part, if you have the logic of the video calling and if you have the React.js skills as well from some other place, then you can bring them together and create that. Suggest like some good GitHub source. For what? For what, Sumit? I think I would need that information to answer the question. What GitHub source would you like me to give you? Okay. Redux or hooks, which should we use? Hooks is not really a replacement for Redux. Context API is. If that's what you were asking, I would say, just like I said, Redux has one of the advantages I know with Redux is that you get a very nice dedicated dev tool environment inside Redux. So if you're somebody who's into that, go ahead and use that. Context API is easier to set up and is inbuilt into React as well. So if you just want to get started, just want to have a central state, then use that. But for the most part, I would say if you are on the crossroads for choosing any one of your medium size or large size projects, I would just say, and I would just go ahead and recommend you Redux, because it's a well-tested solution. It has been available for long, and I personally use it as well on CodeDAM. So yeah. Can't we just use prop types instead of TypeScript? Isn't compiling TypeScript really slow? I don't think so, unless your system is very less on performance. Otherwise, prop types, it has been proven multiple times that prop types and flow and stuff like this is not really up to the mark of TypeScript, honestly, because the developer experience which TypeScript provides is unmatched with these other things. So yeah, for the most part, I would say if it is possible for you for TypeScript, please go ahead and use that. But obviously, if you have system limitations, just like you said, then obviously you can take a look at other solutions. But yeah, if it is possible, which would be possible, I believe in 95% of the cases, go ahead and use that. How to know whether my React project is following best code practices? This is a good question. The way you would know it is by building some real application which is usable by people in any way in which people can interact. And once you have that application, you can use platforms like Twitter to reach out to developers, to reach out to people who are also learning. You can use Discord servers like we have for CodeDAM. You can find the link for that Discord server in the description, and you can share those projects with people, right? And let people just comment on your work. Let them see what you have built. Let them check your code and get feedback. So for the code practice, for the most part, if you have open source your project, and if you actively go ahead out there and ask people for their feedback, people a lot of times get back to you with quality feedback. And for one other way you can know if you're following best practices or not is by actually taking a look at other people's source code. If you are reading a lot of code which other people have written, eventually you're gonna realize that, oh, I can also use this, the way he has done this thing or the way she has done this thing in the code, in my own code as well. So that's how you understand it. Now obviously it takes time, there's no really sort of deadline for this, but yeah, that's how you learn. I'm bad at CSS, so my React apps doesn't look good. Should I stick with a UI framework, although I feel it will make all apps look the same? This is the reason we have things like Tailwind CSS, because they just provide you with the bare minimum nice packaged styles, and then you can go ahead and just use that. So yeah, I mean, if you're bad at CSS, I would say work on CSS first. But if you're bad on the UI design part, I would say don't worry a lot about that. Now figure out what you're bad at, because if you're bad at CSS, that is the coding part, then I would say invest some time. But if you are not a good UI designer, that means you cannot come with a good design layout or whatever, which honestly I am as well. I'm not a very good designer as such. I cannot come with a very good web design aspect. So yeah, that's not a bad thing, because that is not your profession as a developer. So for that part, you can take inspiration from other designs, you can take inspiration from other websites, and then you can use frameworks like Material UI, Tailwind CSS, Bootstrap, stuff like that. And it would not make your apps look the same, because you know, if you're using Material UI, things like that, you can always go ahead and use CSS to add that custom feel to your website anyway. How to create multiple bundles using Webpack. If you can't explain here, you can make a video on it. I think I have a full crash course on Webpack on this channel itself, so feel free to check that out. But for the record, if you just want a quick answer, you have to define multiple entry points for creating multiple bundles using Webpack. And you can just go ahead and Google that, what is an entry point, or you can go ahead and follow that crash course as well. I don't have its link with me yet, but you can go ahead and search it here. So yeah, just creating multiple endpoints, multiple entry points would do the job. As I have experience of mean stack developer, but at work I am using only Angular to implement application, but I want to work as full stack. So which next skill should I start learning also in cloud tech? One second, I think I did not really get your questions. You have experience in mean stack, but you work with Angular on the work side. Okay. And you want to work as full stack. So I think you already have experience in the front end and back end for the most part. So the next thing I would say, just like, I mean, your suggestion is fine. The next thing I would say is work on some cloud tech skill, right? Just explore AWS, just explore serverless. What is serverless? How the Lambdas stuff like that work? What is S3? Like, you know, technologies like Lambdas and S3 and yeah, I mean, things like these, they actually make your applications a lot scalable, and you don't have to work a lot on your own for that. So explore that part of the cloud tech, which is actually practical to you initially, that is, you can use right away, and which is interesting and fun as well. So definitely for cloud, you can start with DigitalOcean if you want, if you are not if you are not very comfortable with AWS at the moment. But yeah, exploring serverless, I think, should be a good tech skill you can learn next. Why you recommend React Query or use SWR over native fetch API? More details, please. I think I mentioned it, but I might have just missed that in the speed. React Query and use SWR are better than the native fetch API because they come baked in with all the caching, with all the invalidation, with all the you know, things like refreshing automatically inbuilt, right? So if you're building your own custom native fetch API wrapper, you have to do that manually. Imagine you are on a page which retrieves about a 300 KB of JSON payload, and you navigate as a user, you navigate to some other page, and then you come back to that whole page again. And if you're using fetch API inside use effect and stuff like that, you would see you don't really have the logic for caching the response. So you are actually hitting the server again and again when it was not needed. So this is like one example of native fetch API where you would be heavily benefited if you're using React Query or use SWR. So there are more, you can say, advantages, but this is like caching and invalidation and automatic refreshing of data is one of the best use cases I have found of these libraries. Okay, so do you struggle with styles or with design? I think um, I'm a bad designer, to be honest. I don't like designing aspects, but if you have a design with you, I can code it. So yeah, that's the thing. I hope he does similar live session with Angular if he did not do it yet. Absolutely, we can schedule an Angular session as well, but at the moment, I think I have some sessions on my mind, so probably not this month, but yeah, Angular is on my list. Should I learn hooks first or Redux? You should not learn Redux at all initially. Just stick to React functional components, React hooks, stuff like that. If you get to a point when you are trying to get a shared common state, that is a global state, then use context API. If you're learning, if you are like trying to explore new things, then Redux is fine. I'm a first year engineering student. Any advice till now about internships and jobs? I think focus on your skill set. That is the number one thing I would say, because you have a lot of time to explore a lot of opportunities later on in the life, but this time you have a lot of people are actually running behind internships and CVs and filling everything. So this is the time you have to get leverage over those who are not working on their skill sets, become good at what you do, and the internships and jobs would be actually a side product of your actual value you can provide to the people. So yeah, please explain hooks in easy way to remember. mm, I don't think that would be a topic for the live stream, but um, I think I have a bunch of videos on hooks on this channel as well, but when the React mastery learning path would be up, I would be happy to actually take another live session, just walk you over through all the things in that, and you can obviously use that content to learn about React things later. CodeDAM is a very beautiful site. Can you tell us which tech stack did you and your team use to create it? Thank you, Siddhant, for that. We are using Next.js as of now. I'm using Material UI for some things, and just like I said, with Material UI, we also have the custom CSS things here and there. So for the front end part, I would say that's mostly it. Next.js server-side rendering using Material UI. I use Redux. Yeah, I think that's what comes on the top of my mind. Deployed on Vercel. So yeah, that's all for the front end thing, I would say. Any source on this channel for React component patrons? React component patrons. What do you mean by that exactly? Do you mean like how you split files for components or how you write components? Because for the most part, I would just recommend going with the functional components at this point. So yeah. Can I learn complete web development course on my Android? Cause I almost completed HTML and CSS by using Droid Edit, but I'm not sure about JavaScript. This is something I want to implement on CodeDAM as well. That is like complete learning on the mobile application. This is something I take I want to do, honestly. So yeah, for the most part, just to answer your question, you can do that. There are applications. You can obviously learn the content on YouTube, and you can implement coding and stuff on a lot of applications which provide a play store, a playground like interface, right, where you can write HTML, CSS, JavaScript code. But I want to implement this on the CodeDAM mobile application as well, because we have a nice integration of the courses. Plus, I'm actually working on that interface where you can actually execute not just HTML, CSS, JavaScript, but literally any code on your mobile phone itself. right? By using the cloud execution mechanism, which we have on CodeDAM. So yeah, just to answer your question, it's definitely possible to learn web development. On mobile, it's going to be hard. It's going to be uneasy. That's for sure, because honestly, you would be much faster in learning if you have a laptop or a desktop, but it is possible. It depends on, you know, on your will to learn. If you are having, you know, a lot of willpower for just jumping across all these hurdles, this is definitely possible. When we connect the functional component with store, it become a tight coupling, and how we can reuse this component without how we can reuse this component using without state or in other application. I would say it is tightly coupled to your store now for the most part. I don't really understood the question, if I'm being honest here. So yeah, I mean, you can go ahead and obviously use components in different applications as well, but the concept of dumb components and smart components is always there. So just try to make sure your components are stateless, number one, and if they have state, they have internal state, because just like you said, if you have external state, if you have global state, then it sort of becomes, even if you're using props and stuff like that, then it becomes sort of, you know, you just link it to a chain where people can actually, where other code can actually manipulate your code. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's what I would say. Okay, let's see. I have to start work on MVC plus React, but I don't have any idea and from where we can start. If you have any prior experience with MVC architecture, I would say React is the V in the MVC, right? So I don't know if you are bound to use MVC architecture, because if you are just using React, it's fine for the most part. So yeah, I mean, I need more context on your question. If you have experience with React or not, where's the problem? Like, you're trying to explore the MVC part or the React part. But yeah, just to assume that you have no idea about the whole thing right now, I would say start with React, start building some applications, follow a YouTube playlist, or you're gonna find a React course on the CodeDAM playlist as well. So if you go to this channel, inside the playlist section, you're gonna find a React playlist you can start off with. And yeah, just get familiar with the technology first of all. That's how you're gonna start. What do you think about React course on Free Code Camp? It's good, but I think they have class-based components there. At least that's what the exercise involved the last time I checked. So I would have recommended that, but I won't really say that go ahead and learn class-based components in 2020. So yeah, I'm not actually sure if they still use that. So you might want to check on that. Please upload backend projects on CodeDAM. Projects is again a work in progress thing. So definitely we are working on projects as well. We have a very small team, so so that's why it takes a lot of time sometimes to just fulfill your request, but we are working on that. So yeah, you're gonna see a lot of things in this month. So definitely. Thanks, Utkarsh. Um, Atharv asks what is needed in internships after second year in. Depends on the company, right? If you are working for a company who's a startup and has been building some mobile application which uses React Native, then obviously they won't really hire you if you're working with Angular, right? So just figure out internships or companies or startups, whatever, which are using your tech stack, which you have been good in, and then approach them. That's how I would do. Would you do a live coding session on some of your projects, or maybe CodeDAM site architecture? I definitely plan to do a live coding session. It would be very fun, but I don't have very nice setup because honestly, if you could see me right now, I am actually sitting between wires right now. So yeah, I definitely need to work on my setup first of all, so that we can have a nice little setting up of everything on the screen, and just have a nice way to actually work on real projects for long, because projects are not going to be over in 30 minutes, 45 minutes. It's going to take at least an hour, 2 hours, stuff like that. Gaining knowledge about Redux Saga is helpful, or is Redux Thunk enough for our knowledge base? If you ask me honestly, I don't get the concept of Redux Saga. I mean, why would you use generators for um, I don't know. I won't really answer that question because I personally don't like Redux Saga. Redux Thunk should be enough, should be more than enough for you as a person, right? So again, this might depend on your tech stack, your company requirements, uh, everything. So yeah, I mean, for the most part, I would say that don't go with Redux Saga if you ask me. But if yeah, that's my only advice because I don't like it personally. Thanks for the session and your time. Can we donate to CodeDam? I would be very happy if not for donation part, but if you want to opt in for the CodeDam lead part, because this way you're gonna get something in return as well, and we're gonna be able to serve all those people who are watching the content for free on CodeDam. So this is sort of a win-win if you are interested in learning, and we get the opportunity to reach out to more people. So that's something I would appreciate. Hey, we are coders, not fashionists. Absolutely, I agree with that, but I don't think anybody would want me to see wrapped into 7 wires and a television falling off the falling off the wall when we are coding. So yeah, I mean, definitely that's something I want to improve upon before we actually go live with projects. So yeah, I get the point, but yeah, I mean, I can't really explain my situation unless you really see me. uh yes, it will be great to create the CodeDam website in a tutorial. It won't be possible to create the CodeDam whole website in a tutorial because obviously it's much more complicated than that. But yeah, just like I said, I would be happy to take up some projects, some live projects very soon. How can I get paid while learning? What kind of money you make now? um what I did personally was, when I started off coding, this is actually the way I learned, right? So when I started off coding, I would take up a lot of freelance projects on sites like Fiverr, which would actually give me a very wide variety of challenges, because every person has a different sort of problem for which they approach freelancers on Fiverr. So that got me actually two benefits. Number one, I was able to just generate some pocket money, and number two is that I learned a lot of things using that thing as well. So yeah, definitely, if you want to earn while you're learning, freelancing is a good thing to get into, because if you're trying to start a YouTube channel or anything for the earning part, I would recommend do not, because YouTube does not pay a lot unless you are very popular, right? So freelancing is the way to go if you want to earn while learning. Is it good practice to just copy and write codes of good UI sites for HTML, CSS experiences? Not copy and write. I would say take inspiration and then try to code that design which you're seeing on your own. It is not bad if you try to recreate something, but if you're learning and if you're trying to copy paste and you don't know what's happening, then definitely don't do that, because that's doing you no good. Best way to handle user login and session through JWT or other method? Can't find any good solution anywhere. So I would say personally, use JWT. That's what I use at codedam.com as well. If you observe, I just made this change a week ago, simply because using JWT solution is scalable. So yeah, I mean, as long as you're not sending ridiculous amount of data to the client on every request, JWT should be fine. And especially for applications like React, which are not really, reloaded on every single navigation. JWT is fine for authentication part. So yeah, I mean, store little data in JWT, use it wisely, and it is a very good solution out there. Is competitive programming important or development important for getting internships after second year? Good institutes. I would say for internships, if you are targeting off campus, that is, you're not going through your university, development development skills are more important, because that's how, especially in the companies which are not way too big, like not really Google or Facebook, stuff like that. So if you have those skills, that is important. But obviously, if you're going through campus placements, campus internships, or if you're targeting big companies which have the fundamental competitive sort of rounds in their initial initial rounds or initial stages as well. So for that part, the competitive aspects become important. What do you recommend for a real-time chat application? Backend and server setup. Well, if you ask me, I'm gonna go with Node.js, because that's what I work with, but you can go with any other tech stack you like. So I would personally, if you ask me, I would go with Node.js on raw WebSockets for the chat application. And I would probably just go ahead and put, at least for the testing part, just put Node.js on 2-3 servers, put a load balancer in front of them, and yeah, be done with it. So for the most part, I think Node.js is pretty good with the IO and WebSocket handling and everything. And yeah, that should be you should be able to get a nice amount of real-time connections with that setup. Thoughts on Next.js, Storybook.js. Again, these are something which are available, but I don't use in my day-to-day workflow. So that's why I did not really discuss those things. But definitely, yeah, if that solution works for you, go ahead and use that. I've not really personally used Storybook.js, so I won't be going into that. But yeah, that's something you could Google up. You can see on various other sites. Age 36 is okay to start programming as a freelancer? Definitely. I mean, uh, it does not really matter a lot what your age is. For example, I started freelancing when I was 13 or 14, and yeah, I mean, I used to think about, am I, too young for freelancing, or what if other person discovers that I'm very small, and I'm handling that amount of work for their corporation or company. So similarly, for this applies on the other end as well. If you think that you are too old for something, or if you are just not in the touch, you are wrong, because there's no real I would say any sort of rule or any deadline that programming is just for people below 30 or below 40 or below 50. You can start coding anytime, anywhere, any place you are, and yeah, get started with it. What should be the first project in app development? Hello world. I think after that, go ahead and pick up something which you like, maybe a game, maybe an application which controls the television in your house using infrared sensor on your mobile phone. Maybe you want to create a streaming client with the Raspberry Pi, having your phone as the controller and using it as a controller connected to your Wi-Fi in the home. There are so many ideas. Just think about things, and yeah, start working on ideas. So I think we are done with the questions. I would be closing the stream in the next 2-3 minutes. So if you have any other question, this is the time. Otherwise, it has been a good live session, I believe. And if you have been benefited from it, you can just go ahead and join us on our Discord group as well, our Discord server. We have an actual program there where we actually reward people with the lead subscription if you are the most active on the server, help people out, ask the right questions. So definitely that's something you might want to take a look at as well. So yeah, I believe that's all for the stream then. Last question. Have my application in Python Django, need chat module for it, so can you recommend for this setup and DB2? Just like I said, does not really matter the technology which you're using. For Django, again, WebSockets is an option. For database, I would say go ahead and stick with anything, MySQL, MongoDB, anything which you're comfortable with. And for chat, obviously go with WebSockets. So yeah. Okay, I think I would take these last two questions from Robert and Utkarsh, and then we'll call it a day. So AWS serverless for a backend for Uber type app. AWS serverless for backend for an Uber type app. So what's the question here? I'm not really sure. I think AWS serverless would be a good thing. You have so many functionalities from them, the app sync, the lambdas, the I actually forgot about that service which has that GraphQL based scaling. But yeah, AWS serverless is always a good option. Can you name some of mid-level JavaScript projects? Things you cannot really do right now, or maybe you find difficult to do, are mid-level for you. It's not a strict requirement, but yeah, mid-level would sort of start involving things like, just like it was going on in the chat, like the chat website. So can you create a sort of an application which is having a chat room based system where people can join into certain room, people can create certain rooms, people can leave certain rooms, and involves WebSockets, low latency chat, databases, stuff like that. So that's a mid-level project, I would say. So yeah, guys, that's all for the session today. I would just call it a day now. I guess I answered for about mostly an hour, 40-50 minutes. Hopefully this was beneficial for everyone who tuned in, and thank you so much for joining today. That would be all. Don't forget to like and subscribe the video. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in some other video.